Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Hospitality 360. We've got a very exciting show for you today. We're going to do your weekly news and review, and we're going to have different perspectives by different people in the industry. I'm Ritu Rani. I'm one of your hosts. I'm here along with Ken Patel, CEO and founder of EV Hotel Group. Good morning, Ken. How are you this Thursday?
Good morning. Good morning. Just very busy day today. Very busy day, but I'm excited to have Chip on here. Just found out some phenomenal news that I probably won't discuss on the general public here, but I'm excited to have Chip on. Obviously, Tejal from our All Women Advisory Board as well. So excited to have her on as well.
Yes, so we've got two very special guests. Chip Rogers, who's, as all of you know, is the president and the American Hotel and Lodging Association, the AHLA.
I think she's got.
And Tejal, good morning to you as well. Fellow advisory EV Hotel, and she means.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Tejal Patel.
Can you all hear me?
You're kind of lagging a little bit.
Yeah, we can. Your internet's a little bit spotty there on your side, but it's okay. Thank you for the intro, Ritu. So, Tejal, you can take it away.
All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Tejal Patel. I am so excited to be here. I hope everyone is doing well wherever you're tuning in from. And yeah, I'm ready to get this show started.
Okay, well, Tejal, I'm going to ask you to take over. I'm still traveling. I'm still in Louisiana, so if it starts to cut out. Last week, we ended the show with an article from Lodging Magazine where it talks about the Safe Stay program, which the AHLA has been extremely involved in. So this started last year, and it started at the beginning of the pandemic, and it's basically, to make our hotels more safe for people that are visiting and for the staff. So there are a lot of different initiatives that have been put into place, like cleaning procedures, interactions in the workplace. And this couldn't have been done without the help of other organizations that the AHLA has been working very, very closely with. But there are new protocols that are coming into place, especially for the urban hotels. And Chip, I wanted to know from you, how did this all come about? What do you see, down the road for how this program is evolving as we open up?
Well, first, thanks for having me on the show. Always good to see you. Hadn't seen Tejal in a while. Nice to see you, Tejal. Yeah, we knew from the very beginning, really all the way back to last March, that cleanliness and health and safety were going to be the primary drivers for the recovery industry. So we knew that guests absolutely had to stay in a safe and clean place. In fact, we do constant polling with our friends at Morning Consult, and we found out in about a 2-week span that cleanliness and safety went from about the 4th or 5th concern of travelers all the way up to number 1, and it stayed number 1 up until just a couple of months ago. So we knew it was a primary concern. But in addition to that, we also had to make sure, as you pointed out, that hotel workers, that our team members were coming back into a safe environment. And so we knew this was imperative to bring the entire industry together, which is what we did. And so we created Safe Stay last April, more than a year ago. And we got every major brand. AHLA was joined at the hip with us. Ecolab, which as many of you know in the industry is kind of the force behind all cleaning and sanitation, brought all those groups together, ownership groups, Aimbridge, world's largest management company. And we came up with a set of guidelines that mirror what the CDC has said all along that can be applied to the hotel workplace. And so it's worked incredibly well. We're on our 5th iteration of Safe Stay. It's been adopted by just about everybody, and it seems to be doing the job.
Well, that's really great. You guys have done an excellent job getting that through and really educating everyone. Ken, do you have any thoughts on Safe Stay? And
I just think it's a phenomenal program. I think Chip and his team have just went way beyond anyone's expectations, and and Chip's just done a tremendous job in this industry. I've been in it 25 years. I'm sure he's been in it much longer, and I followed him for many years, all the way, like as Tasia was saying, going back to AHLA. And, this is something that he's always 10 steps ahead. I always say that. Chip Rogers is always 10 steps ahead. And he reminds me of, what's the quote? Oh my God, how am I? Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers, where he's 10 steps ahead all the time. And, but all we got to do is obviously thank AHLA for what they're doing. And even, my thing is that what are we going to look at with this program into the future? Because some of the items were, I think, Chip and AHLA said that we might be looking at 2023, 2024. So, and I think this is a perfect opportunity for everybody to know that we need to have these standards in for a very long time. This is not as 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years. We need to kind of change the industry to implement these standards for a very long time. So it's a phenomenal job from Chip and AHLA.
I have to add on to that. So and again, big kudos to AHLA for spearheading this initiative. So when this was first introduced, we actually implemented it at our properties. We signed the pledge, and we actually displayed some of the materials and resources that AHLA provided throughout the hotel. And like, I'm not saying it just to bring clout to the initiative, but it really is impactful because it helped our guests feel safer. It helped our employees feel safer. And that's what our industry is about, right? We're here to take care of each other, whether you're a guest or our employees. But with that being said, so we're seeing that Safe Stay is evolving a little bit. A couple of years ago, AHLA released a new initiative with the 5-Star Promise, which was geared towards just providing a safer environment for our employees. So now with the pandemic, Chip, how has that program evolved? What's the update on that?
Well, thanks for the question, Tejal. I think you're exactly right. This idea about safety and cleanliness in a hotel, as Ken pointed out, that's not something that just stops today because the pandemic is hopefully winding down. That's going to be with us because we have a new set of guest expectations. And in accordance with keeping a room safe, we also have to make sure that our employees are safe. So this is something that we started many years ago, the 5-Star Promise, to make sure that employees had personal safety devices. And that was really the kind of the crux of what the 5-Star Promise was and is and will continue to be, along with the training to make sure that, yes, you have your personal safety device, but how are you taking steps to make sure that in the workplace, you're not put in a position that can be unsafe. And so all the major brands adopted it. The rollout is still happening. I mean, we knew it wasn't going to happen overnight. The technology continues to change, which is interesting because when we first started talking about it, you had some simple devices that just made noise. Now you have devices that have GPS tracking. And it really depends on what type of property you're in, whether that makes a difference or not. If you think about it, if you're in a large, say, 500-room resort property, and you have something that just makes noise, well, that may not work because who's going to hear it? You could be one of the far stretches of the property. If you're in a 20-room boutique hotel, a personal safety device that makes a loud noise is going to make a lot more sense. And the vice versa would be true for something that has GPS tracking. If you're in a 20-room hotel, you may not have GPS tracking, but if you're in a 500-room resort, it might make sense. And so this implementation has continued to be rolled out. But Tejal, as you pointed out, this is all part of a larger idea that kind of permeates through our industry, that guests should be safe, workers should be safe, that we should be providing a clean environment. I think that's what people expect. Also, by the way, it's what separates us from the short-term rental industry. And I think people have seen that over this year. In fact, there was some polling that came out again from our friends at Morning Consult that showed that guests feel more comfortable in a hotel than they do a short-term rental because of many of the things that we talk about, the standards of cleaning and safety, understanding that if there's a problem, there's somebody they can call who can respond almost immediately. And so all of these things make a difference whether you're talking about personal safety or cleaning throughout the hotel.
I definitely agree, Chip. That's such a good point to bring up because, a lot of people say, well, why don't you just stay at an Airbnb? I was just in New Orleans this weekend and, the hotels they're full. And I don't feel comfortable personally because, again, it's what you're saying, especially now with the pandemic. I don't know if they're cleaning the rooms properly to the same standards as the bigger brands. And I also, it's just hard as a woman. You just don't know, the safety protocols, that there is someone there to take care of stuff. So that's definitely a very good point. So thank you for that. There's another thing that you guys have been very involved in is the Save Jobs Act. And I wanted to know, Chip, if you can comment on, what's happening with the Save Jobs Act. Like, where are we in terms of getting that passed?
Well, first, it's been a long labor even to get to this point. We actually started working on this legislation back during the Trump administration. And the idea is that hotel workers have been impacted in a way that almost no other worker in any other industry has been impacted. We started this pandemic with 900,000 job openings. That was back in January of 2020. And so we have this incredible value, as Ken was pointing out, of the team members that are around us, because they really are what make the hospitality industry so special. And so back in really October of last year, we began saying, how can we get funding that can go to these workers, many of them who have been out of work at that point for 9 or 10 months, now 14 or 15 months, particularly in the urban city centers. How can we help keep them alive, keep them afloat financially? And keep them tied to our industry, because that is so critical. If they leave and go somewhere else, they're probably not going to come back, at least not in the short term. And so we're seeing that now with the labor problems. I know we'll talk more about that later. But we began working, trying to put together legislation. You then had an election, which changed everything. It also necessitated that we began working directly with our friends at Unite Here, which is the organized labor union for the hospitality industry. We're proud to say that a couple of months ago, we came to an agreement with Unite Here. That was a long process, believe me, because we normally don't see eye to eye on all issues, but we do on this one, and that's helping hotel workers. And so we came to an agreement. They have endorsed the legislation. We've endorsed the legislation. We had Senator Brian Schatz from Hawaii and Congressman Charlie Crist from Florida introduced in the House and the Senate. We're still in the process of gathering co-sponsors. We've got to reach a certain threshold before we can get that legislation moving faster. And the reality is in Congress right now that almost all legislation is going to have to be attached to some larger bill. There's very few independent pieces of legislation that are making it through. And so that's kind of our game plan. It's going to take us most of the summer. But I will tell you this, unless hoteliers speak up, and that's everybody listening to me today, contact their members of Congress, let them know that you support this legislation. It's not going to happen. It's incredibly important legislation. It would pump about $20 to $25 billion into our industry that is desperately needed. We're an industry that lost $110 billion in 2020 alone. It would help out hotel employees, and it is really something that could be a kind of a life preserver for a lot of hotels that are still struggling and trying to make up all that lost revenue and trying to help their employees. So really important legislation. I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but it could be something big for our industry.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that. On your website, there is a place where you can go and show your support for it, and we'll post that on the EV Hotel group after the show. So Ken or Tejal, do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, other than I will just echo that AHLA is the greatest organizations when it comes to hospitality advocacy, and there are a few others as well. And so in order to get this passed, right, we can't just have like 10 people sign it. So therefore, please, when you see the link, just share it, blast out in all your networks. I think I'm going to get kicked out of a couple hotelier WhatsApp groups because I literally sent it multiple times. But, our industry is stronger in numbers. So yeah, please sign up and gather the support.
I mean, I think, I'm sorry, Chip, go ahead.
I was going to say, Tejal is 100% right. you need massive numbers. That's what elected officials, that's what they look at. They look at what is the response they're getting? Are their phones ringing off the hooks? Are we filling up their email boxes? And when that happens, strangely enough, the needle begins to move.
And someone just said that they already contacted their local reps. I didn't see their name, but good job. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. It looks like we've had a bunch of people that are saying that they're contacting their local reps and even reaching out. So that's great. I mean, the reach is happening. So, no, I mean, I agree with everything that AHLA is doing and how they're doing it. Our first convention as EB Hotel Group, EB Human, and even this show, Hospitality 360, we've been talking about Alice. So, we'll definitely see you there, Chip. We love
there.
what you do.
Well, speaking of labor, so that brings us to topic number 3, which we've been touching on a lot of our shows, just about how the labor market is shifting due to the pandemic. And we've touched in a lot of the other shows about how the unemployment assistance, all of that is contributing, but there is a bigger issue about staffing shortages across the board and people in the industry who have just left. And the research is showing that they're not coming back. And so there is actually going to be a labor shortage even after everyone's talking about the unemployment, everyone's getting unemployment money, that's going to go away. But I see it. I was just traveling this weekend. As I said, I was in New Orleans, and a lot of the restaurants are closed. The front desk is doing too many jobs. I don't know what the future is going to look like, but I'd love to hear Chip's thoughts, like 6 months down the line, 10 months down the line. There's still going to be a shortage of labor. We're seeing it in the news every single week. What's going to happen here? How do we fix this also?
Well, there is no silver bullet. Both Tejal and Ken know that this was a serious problem before the pandemic, and now it's at a level that we've never seen before. So we actually at AHLA just got approval from our board to go out and spend a lot of money into the 7-figure range to work in 5 cities to look specifically at this problem. And what we're doing is we're doing from some very in-depth research and polling, finding out from workers why they don't want to come into the hospitality industry, and finding out from them what we could offer that would get them into the hospitality industry. We're layering on top of that hiring fairs, both in person and virtual. And once we get done with these 5 cities, we're going to take what we've learned, figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and share that with all of our members. So that if you're in an Atlanta, or if you're in a Houston, or if you're in New Orleans, and you're running a hotel there, you may know or may be able to use some of the information we provide you to get more people to join your team. Here's a shocking statistic that I think everybody needs to keep in mind. Prior to the pandemic, at the 6-month mark of hiring someone who works as a room attendant, those people, the rate of people that were still on the job at the 6-month mark was 30%. That was before the pandemic. So
right.
We have a very difficult problem of just once we find somebody actually holding on to them. But you pointed out all the problems. First and foremost, the additional unemployment insurance. I don't care what anyone says. We know we polled our membership. It is significant. It is having a major impact. There's no question about it. Second thing, you've got places like Amazon, Walmart, Home Depot, and others who have done exceptionally well during this pandemic, that have scooped up all these workers and provided them with a stable workplace. And they look at hospitality and what's happened to us over the last 16 months, and they say, I'm a little concerned about that. I may like my job, but I don't know how stable it is. And so those workers that have left the industry, they may not be coming back. Third, as I pointed out earlier, we started this pandemic 900,000 workers in the hole. Fourth, you have that major issue with immigration. And in addition to immigration, the guest worker program. The guest worker program has not worked, whether it's Republican or Democrat. They just haven't fixed it. We've been shouting from the rooftops. There's ways to fix this, but the Congress has not listened on that. So whether it's immigration or guest workers, that problem has got to be solved. And then I think the most important thing, and this is where AHLA and our foundation is doing a lot of work, and it's going to be long-term work, is how do we reshape what our industry looks like to people that are just starting their careers, because we've got to do a better job of talking about the incredible opportunity that is in hospitality, what it means to be in a service-oriented industry, to serve others, and the personal satisfaction that comes out of that. We don't do a very good job of selling our industry. We've got to do a better job, because that's the only way long-term we're going to shift this narrative.
Yeah, Chip, I agree completely with everything that you're saying. And we've talked about it on a lot of the shows. We need to do a better job of training, of marketing, of sales, like all of that in the industry to keep people longer term. Ken, I know you've got some serious opinions on this as you share with us. Can you share some of them?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this since 2016. I've said it since 2018. 2018, our unemployment rate in this country was 5.1%, and we still were looking for GMs. The development programs need to be at the highest levels. I've said the tech companies are doing tremendous work. I've seen the bartenders during this pandemic, from serving drinks to now they're coding software. So, I think a lot of things have changed now dramatically. And, it has a lot to do with how we're doing with the development programs, how we're actually going to, speaking to the Harvard Business School, these kids were telling me that we don't want to work in hospitality because it's labor intensive. We want technology. And I think we're getting there. I think, that's obviously going to be a little bit later, but I love what AHLA did with technology. And, there's a lot of different things that we are going to be able to change it, but we need to everybody needs to get on one page about it. Like what I think 3 weeks ago when I sent the article about here in Atlanta, what I think it was UPS was doing, where they're hiring 250 or 300 employees over the next 3 months. But their part-timers are always turned into full-timers. And then they have a certain development program with a tuition assistant. So it's not, I think we always struggle with, okay, let's just pay this employee $16. Let's pay this employee $17. They'll work for us. I think it's more of the development side. And I think what Chip and his foundation there, what they're doing, and I believe strongly in how they're going to tie all this together, because they've also had over 100,000 certifications completed within AHLA. I mean, that's amazing. And all in that is all about development and educating and mentoring. And we need that. We definitely need that. I mean, this labor force is not going to move till we have that. I think these employees, I mean, I get 3 to 4 calls a day from employees, and even 6 to 7 messages on LinkedIn, probably even more than that. But they tell me they're just ticked off, that they never got phone calls when they were furloughed and things of that nature. But I mean, I tell them, look, it was a real bad time. It was a very, very bad time. And, I think people just weren't thinking. They didn't have the right mindset of what to do. But let's just all come together and we can all solve this as just a one big union that we don't have.
Yeah, I want to add one other thing. Since I'm looking at this more from the real estate perspective, when I have buyers looking for properties and they're always asking for value add, you wouldn't believe how much of it is on hotel mismanagement. It's not because the hotel needs a PIP. I mean, that's one thing, but it's because there aren't enough employees, because everything hasn't been managed properly. This is pre-pandemic. This is not during the pandemic. So it is a huge issue, which just continues to be. And the pandemic has just made it just more and more difficult. We've got a big job ahead of us.
Yeah.
Tejal?
Go ahead, Tejal. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Chip.
Oh, I was just going to say that. No, I think I'm going to echo y'all's thoughts that, yeah, that's absolutely true. I think that our industry is just extremely, extremely demanding, just the work that we do day to day. And so I always preach this, that our industry is based upon kindness and empathy. So you need to have empathy for your employees. I mean, I've worked for other people for most of my career before I went into the ownership side. And so I remember being a young person, what I wanted when I would go work in a hotel, when I went for a restaurant job, what I needed was like mentorship and development, but also a good culture. And so for those who have been dealing with the opposite, they're scarred. They don't want to come back. And so as owners, as operators, we also kind of look internally. We need to look internally and see where can we make this better for our next employees. And then also recruit from colleges. I mean, those kids, they're scared, but they're hungry to come into this industry. So they can't come in if we don't give them that chance. So that's my sermon.
You know, I was just going to say too, we are really bad. I shouldn't say we're really bad. We haven't done a good enough job as an industry of really thinking about the cost of this turnover rate, because we think about what's the going rate for someone that's a room attendant, but we don't realize the ramp up time. And if after 6 months you only have 30% of your workforce still there, what does that cost to go out and reacquire new employees? And at this time where it's so difficult, those costs are going up significantly. So that's one thing. The second thing is once they're on the job, are we looking at ways to make them feel more part of the team, asking them what they like about their job, what they don't like about their job? I had an interesting conversation with a hotelier in Minnesota who they have dozens of hotels. And he said during this pandemic, one of the things that they changed with cleaning rooms, this is a really interesting approach. He noticed that the rooms themselves were a lot dirtier. And the reason they were a lot dirtier is because everybody was ordering food to go. And so they're eating the food to go and there's trash everywhere. And his top room attendants didn't want to get in there and clean up all that trash. So what he did is he hired 3 teams. He hired a team of young, typically males, who were high schoolers to come in and clean up all the trash. And that's all they did every day. They went from room to room cleaning up the trash. He hired another team to do any lifting, any moving of beds and stuff like that. And then his expert team came in third, and they just did the professional cleaning at the end. And his retention rate went through the roof because the folks who had the experience, who were doing the cleaning at the end, they were no longer having to pick up the trash. They were no longer having to move heavy objects. And their job satisfaction went through the roof, which is why they stayed. And he said, look, we don't know how long this is going to last, but this approach seems to be working for us.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, also technology is another thing that can help us keep the employees. I don't know, Ken, do you want to get into the technology or go into some of what we're doing?
Yeah, no, we definitely can. I mean, technology is a big player right now. And I think, and this is kind of what I was referring to earlier in the conversation, is what AHLA did with partnering with technology. I think it's HTNG. And I mean, I think it's phenomenal. I mean, I think everybody in hospitality right now knows what we're doing with EV Human, with the world's first all-in-one software for guests and employees, ready to be launched here in 2 weeks. And, we have a lot of partners. I mean, we have Microsoft as a partner, and we obviously have other partners overseas, over 100 hotels already there. And, I think this is a big step as when we look at the Internet of Things and how the industry is going to operate. I just spoke to an executive of a hedge fund 2 days ago, and he asked me, he's like, Ken, why did you create EV Human? And it really goes based on the fact that I felt we were going to have a 30% turnover rate. And how do we cover for that 30% turnover rate? And I felt that we create the different philosophies, and that's what we did with DB Hotel Group, being the world's first technology hospitality management company, where we're turning our front desk into concierge. So no longer are we going to need to look for employees that have PMS experience. And other things with the housekeeping automation, with the robots, where housekeepers no longer have to clean the bathrooms or vacuum the carpets. So a less task-driven system. The only way we do that is with better technology. So, and, I'll obviously let Chip talk about it with their relationship with why they chose to go this route and, what their future looks like with technology.
Yeah, Ken, really, really good point. When I first took over at AHLA, we kind of did an assessment of where was the industry and where was our association? And we quickly recognized that many of the challenges that we were facing were technology based, and that those were only going to increase. They were not going to decrease. We weren't going to move away from technology. And that we as an association really had frankly, a gaping hole there where we weren't up to speed where we needed to be. And so as opposed to slowly but surely building my team in and around that, we went to HT&G and said, look, why don't you guys just become part of AHLA? You have the expertise. You've been doing this for many, many years. You've been on top of this. And so we were able to work that out. It took a little while, but it's great. They're now all part of the AHLA team. And we have a new level of expertise in and around technology. And when you think about technology, and Ken, what you spoke about from the operations standpoint, what you're doing is just amazing stuff that is certainly going to change the game. But even beyond that, when we look at technology with respect to legislation and advocacy, whether it be short-term rentals, whether it be OTAs, whether it's meta search, all of these things are technology-based that are impacting the bottom line of hoteliers, and we have to think about it. We can't let someone else think about it. And so we're in a position now where we can be the experts on those subject matters and provide that information to policymakers from the very small level of down to the city, your city council, all the way up to members of Congress. And they can look at us and recognize that they can depend on the information that we're providing as they think about how to shape future policy.
Perfect. I appreciate that very much so, Chip. I mean, coming from you telling us how well we're doing with it means a lot. It's been a lot of work, tremendous amount of work. That's my voice even sounds like this. But, it's we knew it was going to be a lot of work. You're going to have some naysayers, and we felt like this is something we wanted to be for everybody, and when we talk about EV Human, we've said this is just not for select service, for full service. We've even made this for economies, boutiques, everybody. So, we want to change this industry for the better, and especially for our employees and guests. Me coming in this industry since I was 15 years old, I know what it takes to work paycheck to paycheck. So, I felt like we need to do something for our employees as well, and even our guests. So hopefully, and I want to sit down with you guys one day and kind of talk about this whole technology piece. So I look forward to that conversation.
Yeah, we'd love to do so.
Yeah, I'll just add, our industry has always been a little bit slow to adopt new and innovative practices, especially when it comes to the tech space. And so I think seeing after the pandemic, I think our industry is becoming a little bit more open to it, but there's still a bit of a lag, right? Because a lot of times people think that technology is only available to those who have the money to spend on it. And so sometimes the smaller hotelier doesn't think that they can implement that. So Chip, I want to ask you, with this new partnership that we've got, how do you guys plan to trickle the technology shifts through all areas of the industry?
You cut out there a little bit on me. I'm sorry.
Sorry, internet. But I was saying, like, what can we expect as a partnership between you all, and then how can we expect technology, the mission to drive it forward? How can we influence hoteliers from all sectors to adopt that?
Yeah, Tejal, you brought up a good point about some of the smaller hoteliers believing that they can't afford this. I would make the argument, and I know Ken would back me up on this, I don't think you can afford not to do things like this because the industry is moving that way. You're going to see in short order, you've already seen it, that those hotels that find ways to increase performance, increase guest satisfaction, and do it at a lower cost are the hotels that are going to survive and thrive. The only way to accomplish those three things is through technology. You can train your team the best that you can, but at the end of the day, labor costs are going to continue to go up, and they're going to go up significantly. And so you've got to layer in technology on top of top talent. And as Ken pointed out earlier, good workers, they want to become more effective in what they do, and using technology can make them that way. If you're not willing to do it, if you're not willing to make those investments, you're not going to survive for the long range. There's no question about it. And so when we think about what the guests want, particularly what younger people who will be the longer term guests, what they want, what they expect, how they purchase rooms, what they expect when they arrive at those rooms. If you're ignoring that and thinking that they're going to fit into a 1990s model or an early 2000 model, then you're going to find yourself in a tough position in short order, because that's not what consumers want. And so you've got to do it across the board, whether it's operations, marketing, managing your workforce, managing your revenue. I mean, these are all things that absolutely rely on a technology base. And if you're not doing it, you need to look around and see what your competition is doing, because they're going to outperform you.
Absolutely. My challenge would be to honestly, like, whenever next time hoteliers, when you're looking at your budget, literally really do set some of your budget aside for technology and see where you can implement it, whether that's on the ops side or for your guest side, and really, really make an effort to implement it and just go all in.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
I know we're a little over time, but I wanted to ask Chip, if you've got a second to just go into a little bit of the survey that you guys just did. I know we touched on it a little earlier, but if you can just go into that and then give us any final thoughts, just about the urban hotel market.
Yeah, the sad thing about this pandemic is that it really hurt urban hotels more than anybody else, and in a significant way. And the reason I say that is not that I don't have favoritism over urban or non-urban hotel, but it's the urban hotels that, by definition, have the largest number of employees. And so
Right.
this uneven pain that we felt and uneven recovery is hurting employees a lot more than it actually should if it were equally distributed across the entire industry. And so you see in these urban city centers that are tied to large convention center hotels, the food and beverage operations are not back up to where they are or where they were. And that means hundreds of thousands of employees don't have their jobs back anymore. These hotels themselves can't operate at full capacity. You've got many local elected officials who are still have their head in the sand. They're not recognizing the science. They're not seeing what's happening in other places. And it's making a huge impact, unfortunately, on these employees. And so, I mean, even I'm sitting here in Washington, D.C., even this city is still struggling to recover. You're just starting to get some of the tour groups coming back, but the convention center hotels are still shut down. Hopefully the museums will be opening up soon and people will come back into the city, but it's still struggling. And it doesn't need to be that way. And so, as we look at the outlook, I think your limited service hotels, your resort area hotels, your warm weather hotels, and your hotels in states that have opened up their economies much earlier, they're going to continue to do well. Your hotels that are tied to those convention centers in large cities, mainly in the north, where the window for summer travel is much, much tighter, they're going to continue to struggle. And that's really unfortunate. It's one of the reasons why the Save Hotel Jobs Act is so important, because so many of these employees still don't have their jobs back. So, we're still seeing this. It's still problematic. The recovery is not back. It's going to take a while. We're on the path. But let me give you an amazing statistic, and this is not something that's been shared, I don't think, on any media. So I'll share.
Okay, great. We're glad to be the first.
Had my team go back and look historically, where are we? And everyone is saying, oh, in the month of May, it was great. Hotels are back. Did you know that hotels performed at a lower rate in May of 2021 than they did September of 2001? Think about that. September 11th happened in 2001. In that month, hotels across the country still performed at a higher rate than they did last month. So when people say we're out of the woods, that is just not true. We're coming out of the woods, but there's still a lot of trees around us. We got a ways to go.
I couldn't agree with you more, Chip. I mean, I preach this to our entire team, I think, every day, that I'm like, the summer business is summer business. That's what I say. If anyone thought this wasn't coming, then obviously I don't know where you've been in hospitality, because this happens every summer. It's just happened at a rate that's maybe 30% more than usual. But, the real number is going to be when September rolls out. Let's see what it does when September is it. But, I couldn't agree with you more. But that data that you that's just astounding. I mean, me being from New York City, witnessing the whole thing that happened there, and even right now witnessing what's going on with all my friends and everybody over there. And, it's amazing to know they've told me the same thing, that they said this was something that didn't even outweigh 9/11, but it's I mean, it's just amazing to see what's going to happen here in the next 2, 3 months and even 4 months, and kind of how do we if we have, it's like the stock market, right? And I'm heavy in the stock market. It's like when I see a dip, I'm buying it, but what happens now when we see a dip? What are we going to do? Are we ready for the dip again? So that's what I always say, that it's okay, there is going to be a dip, but what are you going to do when that dip happens? Because we can't expect our labor force to come back and then we have a dip and you say you're furloughed again.
Right.
It's just not going to look good. So,
Well,
but
to add to that, Ken, you're also not going to be able to call your lender and say, "Hey, I'm back in trouble again," because they've extended as far as they can.
Yep.
I know.
Let's not go there. Let's not talk about lenders. But I want to ask Chip though. So on the topic of recovery, and especially for how the urban markets have been slow to recover, I think late last night the news probably broke that we're now going to have a travel corridor going on between the U.S. and the U.K. So do you expect that travel corridor to help out significantly, or even in some small way?
Well, look, you know how much our industry depends on international travel. UK took a very unique approach globally with the vaccines. They're the one country that said, we're going to vaccinate everybody with the first shot and then go back and get the second shot, because the first shot provided so much coverage. And so by doing that, they really put themselves in a position to begin traveling internationally sooner than most. And so I commend the administration, both of President Biden and Prime Minister Boris Johnson, for getting this done. That's really important stuff. But I traveled internationally just last week, and I can tell you that it's actually a lot easier than most people think. I feel like I should be getting paid by Abbott Laboratories, but they've not sent me a check yet. But so they have a product now that allows you to do your testing in the comfort of your own hotel room. And so I was sitting in a hotel room in Greece last week, 24 hours before I was ready to fly, and I got on a computer, and this was with all 4 of my kids and my wife, so all 6 of us did this. It was only $25 a pop, so it's cheap. Sitting in a hotel room, you can get online. There's somebody on the other side. They can watch you take the swab test, put it in this little packet, and show you the results in 15 minutes. And then they send it to your app and you're ready to go. And it worked like a charm. I went through 3 airports, no problem whatsoever. And those type things, that rapid, low-cost testing that you can do from the comfort of your own home, that is going to be key to international travel. So the technology is out there. We can make this happen. People are traveling safely. And we got to get this going because, Tejal, as you pointed out, Houston's a wonderful international city as well. We need visitors not just from the UK. I saw an incredible map yesterday. I can't remember who put it on LinkedIn, but you guys can probably find it, that showed the places on Earth where people are prohibited from coming into the U.S. And there was that huge block in Europe, and you're like, why? I mean, why can't they come in if they're tested safely? It doesn't make any sense. So we got to get this going.
Yeah.
Agreed. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you all so much. Chip, it was great to have you on the show for all of your insights. Thank you so much for what AHLA is doing. And Tejal, thank you as well. It was great to have you on the show. We're going to have you on as a special host more often. So with that, Ken, do you want to say any final words? Oh, there's one other thing. I need to thank Surfer Quest for being our sponsor. I think I omitted them in the beginning, but they are an amazing sponsor for our show. So thank you so much, Surfer Quest. Ken, anything about next week or any closing remarks?
Yeah, I mean, we're actually working on something at the moment, and I'm excited to bring on maybe our next third host, I would say, of the show. So she was top Forbes Women 2020. We haven't finalized it all, but we're hoping to. So I'm a big believer of women in hospitality. I think everybody knows that at EV Hotel Group with our all-women advisory board and all the great women that work for us. So I want to keep that going with the industry. And, I want to also thank the International Hospitality Institute for having me on their board that they just announced yesterday. So, I couldn't thank Chip enough for accepting this invitation and in his very busy life that he does. And now maybe I know where he's at most of the time, so maybe we'll get together more often. But I thank you, Chip. Thank you, Tejal. Obviously, Ritu, I always thank you every day. So
Thank you for
Of
having
course,
us.
Ken.
thank you guys, and thank you for our audience that tuned in today. We appreciate you as well.
Thanks, guys. Good to see everybody.
Good to see you. Bye, Chips.
Have a good rest of the week.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
See you next time.